Hey, welcome to the Digital Insurance Agent Podcast. It is so good to have you here today. And with me is Andy Neary. And a little background on Andy. Andy is a former professional baseball player, two-time Ironman finisher, business coach, and founder of the Complete Game Coaching Program. It's Andy's mission to help business professionals build the mindset, habits, and rituals off the field that lead to all-star performance on the field. So, Andy, great to have you today.
Likewise, Carl, I appreciate being here. I'm excited for this conversation.
Yeah, this is going to be a great conversation. So, Andy, you and I met here a couple of weeks ago, and we began to talk about just some of the challenges that, in particular, insurance agents and insurance professionals are facing. And so that's kind of where we'll take our conversation. But first of all, let's talk about, how do you go from baseball to business to coaching to give us a little of that backstory.
Yeah, well, I was fortunate enough. I got to spend a couple years playing in the Milwaukee Brewers organization after finishing my collegiate career at UW Milwaukee here in Wisconsin. And unfortunately, my baseball career at the pro level is pretty short. Off a lot of it to do with just a bad mindset. As a free agent in pro baseball, I allowed a lot of fear to take over, Carl. Fear of comparison, judgment, failure, all that stuff. And unfortunately, my pro career only lasted a couple years. And when my baseball career was over, I had a family friend reach out and tell me that I should get into financial planning because that's the best way to make money. And so I jumped into financial planning and lasted less than a year for two reasons. He had a heart attack and had to retire. So my mentor was gone. And I just was really bad at selling investments. And I was 22 years old. And I remember getting some advice at that age, Andy, what you need to do at age 22 is dye your hair gray so you look older and go buy a membership at a country club you can't afford because that's where people with money hang out. I'm like, oh, okay. So I had another friend tell me I should try selling insurance. And lo and behold, in 2003, I found myself selling, health insurance, business insurance, personal lines, all that stuff. And over time, I gravitated to health insurance because I found of all the insurances, that was the one I felt you could educate the most. And I really loved educating people. And so, man, spent the next 20 plus years, selling health insurance. And what happened was my big move, Carl, in 2014, Amy and I, my wife and I, decided to move out to Colorado. And I found myself in a market where nobody knew me. And I said, wow, okay, I've got to sell health insurance in an entirely new market here where I have no brand recognition. And that's where I decided to try something different that was out of the insurance norm, which was starting a personal brand, which people at the time were like, what are you doing? We don't do that in this industry. Well, lo and behold, I got a lot of people to know who I was pretty quickly. And I was able to build a pretty successful book of business. And over time, that led to some peers reaching out to me to say, hey, I want you to help me do what you did. So what started as a side hustle turned into, wow, I think this could actually be a really nice business, training people how to build credibility with their prospects. And in 2021, I made a decision to let go of the book that I had and went full in on complete game consulting. And that's where we are today. You could call us sales coaching and training, but what we're really doing, Carl, is helping agencies and producers and any partners to the industry build credibility with their ideal prospects.
Yeah, that's perfect. You brought up some things just in that intro that I think are important. One of the things you brought up initially was what really led to your demise early on, and that was mindset.
Mm-hmm.
And as we're talking about building a brand, dive into that a little bit. How important is the mindset in developing that brand?
It's extremely important because I will tell you one of the biggest hurdles we run into when we're trying to teach people how to do this is they just hear the word brand and they think it's egotistical. And what we're really teaching people to do is create awareness. You got to grab attention today if you're going to win business. And you know this, Carl, our market insurance is very noisy. There's a lot of advisors and you have to find a way to stand out. So once we convince somebody that it's not an egotistical thing, it's a part of business, we get to hurdle number two. That's when the fears of judgment comparison, and failure come in, all like I had in baseball, because people are afraid of if I start posting content on LinkedIn. They're afraid of those comments they might get. They're afraid of the judgment they might get from their peers, or they're afraid of failing. What if this doesn't work? And that's really, it's ironic how it's full circle. The same mental hurdles I had in baseball were the same mental hurdles people have when it comes to building brand.
Absolutely. It's interesting. I run across, even with our clients, this fear of putting yourself out there.
Mm-hmm.
And that's always the risk. Somebody could laugh at me. Somebody could leave a nasty comment. There's the risk, and so that fear comes along, which led to the second thing you brought up, and that was in your second iteration, financial advising, a mentor, and your mentor passed away, a year into it.
Mm-hmm.
What's the importance of a mentor
Oh,
to build and scale?
one part of the story, it's tremendously important, because one part of my story I don't share very often, Carl, is before we moved to Colorado in 2014, in 2011, I almost quit the insurance industry, because at the time I was running a benefits department for a P&C agency. I really wasn't, I was kind of out on an island, not enjoying what I was doing. This thing called the Affordable Care Act was coming around, and I'm like, oh, this is going to be a nightmare. I almost quit. In fact, I did quit that job, and I took about a week or two off. And I'll never forget, I got a call 2 weeks later from a local agency that I'd always, somebody I'd wanted to work for. They had a very good reputation. And I had to take a step back. I went out of the production role and into an account exec role with them. But that's where I learned, I got my first mentor, Dan Burkwald, who ran Burkwald and Associates. And he taught me self-funding. He taught me how to take care of clients the right way. I mean, he taught me the business. And without him, I don't think I'd be in this industry today, because had I not gone to work for him, I probably would have ultimately quit and gone on to do something else.
Yeah, it's interesting, when it comes to mentoring and even stepping out and creating your brand, seems like the fear of failure uh, is what keeps people from both of those things. I'm afraid to have a mentor looking over my shoulder. And so tell me a little more about this. He taught you the business. What would you say were the golden nuggets that you've
Mm.
taken from him that you're now passing on to other people?
One thing Dan was so good at was he had high expectations for himself. That was probably the biggest takeaway. When I look at um, how we ran as an operation internally, it actually was a curse for us at times, because we held ourselves to such a high expectation. We actually set that expectation for the client too. And so it required us to make sure we never fell from that. So that was one nugget: is expect more of yourself than you expect from anybody else. The second one is process. I still teach processes to our clients today, 13 years later, that I learned inside that office. What he had done, unlike anything I had seen in the industry to that point, was everything we did was a process. And it was a repeatable process, so that if I left or somebody was down, you put somebody else back in that spot, and we keep the process rolling without a hitch. I'll give you a quick example. The amount of notes you had to take for your clients working at Burkwald was unbelievable. How we followed up with clients, how we saved those notes so that months later we could quickly recall everything we talked about. When I got hired as an account exec there, my first task was I had to sit down with my 25 clients I was taking over. But we had 2 years of meeting notes in binders for every single one of these clients. So I could literally step into the next meeting, even though it's my first meeting with this client. I knew everything I needed to know about them.
Oh, that's
That
great.
process, that focus on detail was something I will never forget.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Systems are so critical, and I'm sure as you're just explaining with your clients, discussing this need for systems. I think sometimes we're so eager for the next sale that we forget we've got to have systems in place. So talk a little bit about that in your journey. You same thing, you want to produce, but how do you make sure it's repeatable?
That is, I love you brought this up because I tell people the one thing we probably teach the most, Carl, is marketing and sales systems, processes, right? There's no silver bullet script. There's no perfect product. It's what's your process? Are you running a repeating process? You know, when I look at producers who always hit their goals, who always exceed their goals, they're simply running a process. That's it. They wake up every day, they know what the game plan is, and they just trust the process. Producers who are going for the quick wins, who don't have a process, are waking up every day and they're trying to do something that's going to create a win today. The people who run a process, the producers who run a process, wake up today and know that the work they put in today may not reveal itself for months, sometimes years, but they know that that work has to be done today. And so we'll get a producer, for example, who is struggling to open doors. And the biggest clarity they need is they just need a clear strategy that they can execute every week. And there's no perfect strategy. Are you going to make a certain amount of cold calls? Are you going to send out a certain number of emails? We still have prospects or clients who go door to door. How are you going to use LinkedIn? How are you going to use webinars, email, whatever it is? It's creating a process around that stuff that you can repeat every week. That's what ultimately leads to the success. And I'll tell you, from a personal standpoint, Carl, complete game consulting would not be at the level of success it's at 3 years in without systems. You know, I don't know if any of your listeners are familiar with the entrepreneurial operating system, EOS, from the book Traction. I implemented Traction when I didn't have any employees. And people would be like, why would you do that? Well, I wanted to have systems in place so that when we started hiring people, it became easy. And we've had people, I share this because it's been a source of pride for me. We've had people look at our business and the revenue and go, how are you creating this revenue with 2, 3 employees? Systems.
Perfect.
Our business would not exist without systems. The best producers wouldn't be selling the amount of assurance they are without systems. Systems is everything.
Absolutely. Yeah. And cheap, shameless plug for the book Traction. If you haven't read it, go read it. We also run
Yeah.
EOS in our
Awesome.
agency. And so firm believers in that. You opened up I think our next topic of discussion here, multiple modalities of being able to accomplish the task. You know, you could go door to door, you could make cold calls, you could be sending out emails, you could be using LinkedIn, you could be on social media. Let's talk about those multiple modalities. How does a producer figure out what's the right modality for them?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I'm going to steal something from a mentor of mine. By the way, for folks listening in, you know this, Carl. Some mentors you never meet, right? It's
Yes.
people you follow or read books from. So one I follow is a gentleman by the name of Alex Hormozy. And he's got a great book, $100 million Leads. But in the book, he's talked about how we reach out to prospects. And this was really an epiphany for me. There are 4 ways we can reach out to prospects: cold one-to-one, which is the way we were taught in this industry. Cold calls, cold emails. I was taught how to go door to door. I started my career at Federated Insurance after the financial planning failure. I was taught to park my car in an industrial park and go door to door. There's warm one-to-one, which would be like networking and referrals. Then you have warm one-to-many, which is the one we don't leverage enough in this industry, which would be social media, podcasting, public speaking, webinars, right? These are all ways we can get one message in front of a lot of people at one time. And then you have cold one-to-many, which would be advertising. A good prospecting strategy actually crosses all 4 categories. The challenge we have in the industry is even in 2024, the majority of the producers out there are still only leveraging cold one-to-one. And the one that we tend to focus on the most for producers is the warm one-to-many. How are you going to get one message in front of a lot of people at one time fast? You and I are on a podcast right now. This is just a form of warm one-to-many. So if producers could spend more time trying to reach more people at one time, I think their awareness, the level of awareness and credibility they would build would happen much faster. And that's what I leveraged when I moved to Colorado. I said, how am I going to get one message in front of a lot of people at one time? Because here's the reality, Carl. This phone, it is harder to cold call today than it's ever been, because it takes 18 phone calls today to just get one prospect on the phone. not even to really say yes, just to get them on the phone. We're calling cell phones more than we ever have. And if I don't recognize a number on my phone, I'm not answering it. Worse yet, my phone might say you're spam. And the truth is, it's just harder to cold call today. So we have to leverage these other opportunities like referrals, networking, and then the warm one to many. And that to me is what a really good, sound prospecting strategy looks like today.
Absolutely. Andy, you've been talking about developing that brand, and that brand is really the key component to that, you know, outbound to many, whether that's a podcast, a webinar, social media. You've got to start to build that strategic credibility. So let's talk
Yes.
about that. Here you are, a producer. You sell the same products as the other producer down the street. You've got the same services. What makes you so special? How can a producer really develop that specialist persona in the marketplace so people want to tune into the podcast, the webinar, the YouTube video?
I will answer this with a story. So I had a prospect turn into a client, a broker reach out to me, and he said the exact same thing. He's in a market where everybody sells captives to construction companies. He's like, how am I going to stand out? I said, Fred, we're going to make you the one people see the most. I firmly believe he or she who educates the most wins the most. So I said, Fred, you need to create a strategy using LinkedIn, email, maybe some public speaking at association events where you just build so much awareness for who you are. I don't care if you're talking about the same things the competitors are. If you talk about them more, you're going to win. And that's why brand matters. That's why putting yourself out there matters, is because this is something I learned from another mentor of mine, Carl. We trust people we see, we trust people we know, and we trust people we learn from. You and I probably follow people on social media we've never met. I just mentioned Alex Hormozy. Never met the guy, but I trust him because I see him all the time. I feel like I know him and I learn from him. Anybody can do that with their prospects, whether you're Alex Hormozy making millions of dollars or selling insurance. You have to let people see you, let people get to know you, and let people learn from you, which leads to the other formula I wanted to mention on this. How do you stand out? We use a really poorly named formula. It's called value times volume equals credibility velocity. The more value you put out there, the more often you do it, the faster you're going to build credibility. Because we get a lot of questions around, Andy, how much content is too much? Well, if your goal is to bring value, there's never enough, because the more you put out there, the faster you're going to build credibility.
I love
And
that
so
equation, Andy.
well, again, I couldn't come up with a better name, credibility velocity, but it made sense.
Excellent. Well, and let's say you dove into this a little bit. Education is really the component of value. So what you become is an educator in the marketplace. Uh, and let's talk about that. Are there some other components of that value equation as well?
That's a really good question. Education, so let's imagine somebody wanted to use a platform like LinkedIn more to grow their business. And they're going to commit to creating content. My first piece of advice would be, okay, there's two things you really want to accomplish with your content. One, share personal stories from time to time because you want to let people get to know you. But the vast majority of your content is going to be education based. So use your content to teach your prospects. And the filter we use on that is I ask people, what do you think you know better than anybody else in your market? Or what do you think you do better than anybody else in your market? Whatever that is, focus most of your educational content around that. Why? Because you're going to feel the most confident because you feel this is something you do really well. And the more you talk about it, the more you will become known for it. And a lot of people apply what I refer to as the spray and pray approach. They just throw a bunch of stuff out there and they hope something sticks. You got to get laser focused on what you do best and then base your education. If you sell captives better than anybody else, use the majority of your educational content to teach me about captives. Keep it simple. And then here's one more filter I want you to apply. Who's your favorite client today? Most people can look at their book and go, oh, I love working with Jim Smith at ABC Manufacturing. Okay. When you're about ready to post an educational piece of content, I want you to just ask yourself one question. Would Jim Smith find this valuable? If the answer is yes, post it. Because I think a lot of people, Carl, get caught up on that. They're about ready to hit the post button and they don't think it's a good piece of content. They don't think it's valuable enough. If your favorite client would find it useful, I want you to post it. Don't even think about it.
Excellent. So Andy, let's talk through this too. Now that we're talking about posting out value, here comes that next question. Well, now, am I posting blog posts? Am I posting long form video? And then there's these TikTok videos and like what am I supposed to be posting out there? How do I share that value?
Yeah. Well, who knows where TikTok's going to be in a few months, right? The future on that, looks like it might be a little gray, but the first thing you want to think about is how do you want to post? Are you going to create videos? Are you going to write articles? When I started LinkedIn in 2014, I just wrote articles. I was a writer at that time. Do you want to just post pictures? LinkedIn newsletters, for example, is a great feature now, but there's no wrong answer. Lean into what you feel most comfortable with. But here's what you need to remember. People learn using 3 modalities. Some people like to watch videos, right? I love watching YouTube videos to learn. Some people love to read articles and books, and some people love to listen to podcasts and audiobooks. Pick a medium that you're comfortable with, but the ultimate goal would be to cross all 3. If you can post content that includes videos, articles, blogs, and podcasts or audio stuff, you're hitting the largest population. So that's step number 1 is how. Step number 2, you kind of asked where. Well, if I'm selling in the business to business space, I definitely want to be on LinkedIn. When we work with our clients, we draw a picture for the B2B, people in the B2B space, and it's a picture of their website, LinkedIn, and YouTube all working together in one beautiful circle. Because if you're going to do video, for example, Carl, I want you to post that video on LinkedIn. I want you to upload it to your YouTube channel, and I want you to upload it to your website. Because what happens is the more you are on all 3 of those, the more searchable you are. And I think something people don't give enough credit to today is if somebody meets you for the first time, like a prospect, they're going to Google you. They're going to look you up. And if they see your LinkedIn profile, they see your website, they even see a YouTube channel, and there's all this content, you check the credibility box. And that's why it's important as where. If I'm in the B2B space, LinkedIn, YouTube, if you're maybe selling personal lines where you're dealing with individual buyers, Facebook, Instagram could be places you go to put that content. But definitely for the people who are selling to companies, LinkedIn is the number 1 platform you got to be on.
Excellent. So kind of our final question here, Andy, and we'll start to land the plane from here. Obviously, the other question that would come to mind, well, I'm producing all this content, I'm giving all this value, and I'm teaching and I'm training. At what point do I sell something? How do I get people from being a student to being my customer?
That's awesome. So I've got, again, people are probably listening, but behind me, I've got three photos of 3 words: consistent, persistent, and patient. So number 1, you got to be consistent doing this every week. 2, keep doing it long after everybody quits. 3, be patient. Content, the challenge with content, Carl, right, is it doesn't create overnight wins. It creates awareness. And when I work with a lot of producers, a mistake they make on a platform like LinkedIn is they think this content's going to create all this activity. No, it creates awareness. You still got to put the work into sending messages on LinkedIn, connect with prospects, pick up the phone, send emails, do all the things that you have always done. But the more content you create, the more awareness you are going to create. People are going to recognize your name. They're going to recognize your brand. So when you make the phone calls and you send the emails, people know who you are. And that's probably the biggest takeaway I want people to understand with content is content can create opportunities. If it lands in somebody's inbox or in their feed on the right day, but the purpose is the awareness of who you are, brand awareness, so that when you apply all the other prospecting activities, they become more effective.
Excellent. So Andy, you have any final thoughts for the audience before we close out here?
I hope everybody found this valuable. I know I went right kind of into teaching mode. I had a lot of coaching calls today, Carl, so I'm kind of in that zone right now. I would just say this. Let's bring it back to the mindset. If you could go out and attract more of your favorite clients today, would you be happy? Everybody would say yes. And what most people are missing right now, Carl, outside of a process, is not enough prospects know they exist. Not enough prospects know who you are. Now you have a channel like LinkedIn, emails, public speaking. I haven't even gone into public speaking, how it changed my career. But if you could have an opportunity to get more prospects to see you and know you, wouldn't you want to do it? That's what this is all about. So don't be worried about what your peers are going to say. Don't be worried about the comments. You have one job with content. Speak to your prospects. If you just put the guardrails on, put the blinders on and speak to your prospects, and you keep doing it, this is going to work.
Yeah, excellent. So Andy, where can somebody go to learn more about you, to connect with you?
Absolutely. Two ways, two places. They can definitely connect with me on LinkedIn. We are posting content every day there. So just go look up Andy Neary on LinkedIn, Complete Game Consulting, and then come check us out at completegameconsulting.com.
Awesome. Andy, it's been great having you. Looking forward to doing this again with you in the future.
Likewise. Thanks, Carl.
Hey, thank you.